Hello, I'm Jeanine Nodder, and this is Chattn with Jeanine. This week, my guest is Dennis Hogan. He does a lot of things. He's a lawyer. He's running for county attorney. He's the chairman of the Nashua City Committee. He rides his bike in the woods and does a lot of exciting things. Hi, Dennis. Welcome to the show.
It's funny that you mentioned I ride my bike in the woods. That's true.
Yeah, be careful what you tell me because I remember all things.
Yeah. There's a lot out in New Hampshire. There's a lot of stuff out there in the woods that people don't see anymore.
Well, do you come across some historic, old, abandoned cabins?
Well, I don't know what they were because now oftentimes there's nothing left but the stones that made the foundations. But and there's old railroads. Like if you go to Brookline, there used to be a railroad from the pond, and I can't remember the name of the pond, up to Milford. And I understand they brought ice from the pond and got it started to the greater world. I mean, go to Milford, then go to Boston, then everywhere else. So.
Oh, really?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of things that were happening in New Hampshire in the old days that are sort of grown over that we don't do anymore. And it's fascinating. You can see it if you get on your bicycle and go out in the woods. You can see these things. You might have to ask somebody what you saw later on, but yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that.
You're a very well-known person in New Hampshire and very well-liked.
Well, thanks.
I'm
trying to become more well-known because I want people to vote for me, but...
Yes, you're running for
county attorney.
Right. What is a county attorney?
What do they do? The county attorney is the administrative officer for the county attorney's office, and the county attorneys, assistant county attorneys, prosecute felonies, and if somebody has a misdemeanor that they are appealing, they get a misdemeanor conviction in the district court, then they use then it goes to the Superior Court. So, I mean, if you look at it this way, from the court standpoint, you get your district courts, which are basically in the towns. Merrimack has a Merrimack district court. And then above that, you have the Superior Courts, which encompass the counties. And in our county, Hillsborough, there's a north and a south. Normally, it's physically north in Manchester and south in Nashua, but because they're fixing the Manchester building, right now they're both in Nashua. But they'll change back. So, and then above that, there's the Supreme Court. In terms of crimes that might be committed, you have misdemeanors, which are generally handled in the district court. If you want to appeal it, though, you then go to the Supreme Court.
Give me an example of a misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor is a simple assault. If I just touch you when you don't want to be touched.
So frivolous lawsuits are district court.
No, those aren't frivolous. If you're a woman at work and somebody's getting a little too friendly with you and he touches you in a way you don't like, there's your misdemeanor for a simple assault. So, but then something more serious is a check fraud. When somebody passes a bad check, that can be a felony. A real, a beating can be a felony. Rape could be a felony. So, sexual assault. So.
Murder?
Then murder. Then you're talking capital. Then you've gone. The trial would still be in the Superior Court, but the Attorney General's office would handle. People really seriously talk to me about how do you handle a defense of a criminal? And first of all, I'll tell you, not everybody. Sometimes the police just make mistakes. I mean, one of my first experiences with a police mistake was they went to a place that had a bomb threat, and they immediately dialed *69 to see where it had come from, and they got a very nice man who was a real estate agent, and they prosecuted him for calling it a bomb threat. I went and talked to one of the women that was working. This was at a grocery store. I went and talked to the woman who was working at the desk at the grocery store to find out exactly what the process is. Well, what they did was they went to the wrong telephone and did *69. So he had called in earlier to talk to his buddy in the meat department, and who it was that he called with the other phone, we'll never know and so that was immediately, once it was presented to the judge in that way, that little mistake that they made, it was thrown out. So not everybody's guilty. And one of the important things for people to remember, especially people who are tough on crime, and I'm tough on crime, and I got to tell you, if you thought for a second that criminal that accused criminal was not getting a fair trial, right? If you in your mind thought to yourself, well, sometimes they get fair trials and sometimes they just throw them in the be for tougher penalties if you understand that people are getting a good defense. That's the best way to say it.
Okay. So how do you feel about the death penalty?
Well, I tend to support it. There are some things that are just so bad. Taking the life of a police officer. I mean, that's more than just taking a life. It's really trying to take down the system, which is so important to everybody. And so I've supported the death penalty.
Well, I wish we had the death penalty. Well, we have it very limited in New Hampshire, because if we had it, then it can be taken off the table, and you might get more out of the.
Yeah, well, it can be used for a negotiating tool, sure,
Exactly,
if you're facing the death penalty, yeah.
So
and they can face the death penalty in New Hampshire. I know there's a lot of people who don't like it, and they wanted to do some things to change it recently. And,
I don't know.
If we can keep it to a limited number of things, I think we can keep it, have more support for it.
Something you said a few minutes ago, just I don't know what you said now, but
shooting police, because
I heard that name earlier today.
Yeah, well, he's
how do
he's
you
notorious
spell his
because
name?
Alcere, something like that.
I was at a meeting today up in Concord with the New Hampshire Federation of Republican Women, and Andy was there. I just say Andy with the eyes, and everyone knows who I'm talking about. He's a Merrimack resident. He watches my show, so shout out to Andy. But he mentioned that name in connection with you. Was his name on the ballot when you ran for state senate?
I talked to a couple of people back in 2006. Two people who could have run for state senate, had the statute and name recognition to do it, and they said they were thinking about it, and so I, put aside my thoughts of doing it myself. Well, they didn't do it because they were facing going up against an incumbent who was the minority leader for the Democrats, Joe Foster. So then Tom Alcere waits until the very last minute of the signing period and signs up on a Friday, and so it would have left it as Nashua's Republican nominee being this guy who advocates shooting the police if they happen to come in to arrest you for a drug possession or something. It serves them right, kind of thing.
You made history.
Well, yeah, they called me and asked me to write a writing campaign, and so I did. And we did a good job of it, and we got 89% of the vote versus the guy
campaign.
Versus the guy who was on the ballot. So we got 89% of the people to go in there thinking my name and write my name down. So, but I like to mention, especially when I'm running now for county attorney, because I think that the chiefs of police are very appreciative of the fact that I put myself out like that and did all that extra work for a job that, when you're in a city in Nashua, it's very tough to win on the Republican ticket.
I've noticed.
Right, and I've also run against a guy who's already popular, and I'm also running in a year 2006. It's the White House was held by a Republican, and it was an off-year election. So the cards are stacked against me in terms of winning in the end. So I was really doing it for Nashua and for police and law enforcement.
So you made history running as a write-in candidate for the state senate in New Hampshire, and prior to that, you were also a state rep.
I was a state rep back in the 80s when I was in UNH. Studying political science, yeah.
There's a lot of young people running.
It's a good time to do it, I'll tell you. When you're in college, it's a good time to do it. If you can kind of fit the time in between taking classes at sort of staggered in a different way. I took some summer classes, but if there's any young people thinking about their interest in politics, that's the time to do it.
Kind of working on trying to get him to run.
That is the time to do it, because once you need a real job, a 9 to 5er, you can't go to the legislature. They only pay you $200.